let's get to it. The 6 on 360. And it starts with the Super Bowl matchup for Super Bowl 57. Number 1 against number 1. Traditionally, we see some upsets. The lack of the number 1s advancing past the divisional round. Not this year. Chiefs and Eagles, they'll vie for the Lombardi Trophy, and the storylines are plenty as we will head to Arizona and Glendale next week.
Yeah, this is, if you would have said this was the matchup mid-season, I don't think anyone would have had a problem with it. The Eagles are clearly the best team in the NFL based on what they've accomplished this year, based on the fact they lost one game with Jalen Hurts as the starting quarterback, and now they get Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I will take that matchup.
What have they outscored opponents? 68-14, something like that in the two games that we've seen from Philadelphia as they knock off the 49ers yesterday. And the storylines from championship weekend are very different and same at the same time. Officiating was a problem in both. Controversial calls, the lack of discipline and poise in some of the instances on both defenses for San Francisco and Cincinnati. Quarterback play for the winning teams was exceptional. And the quarterback issues for San Francisco, they mar the headlines for what we saw from Philadelphia. Make no mistake, Philadelphia is excellent. But when you can't pass the football in the second half because your backup quarterback is out in concussion protocol and your starter in Brock Purdy can't throw but from a few yards in front of him because of an injured elbow on his throwing arm, major issues arise. And we saw that where they were handcuffed offensively.
I can't remember an easier route to the Super Bowl for a team than what we just saw from them. Destroying what was a good Giants team, but how easily they handled them. Then they're facing a team without a quarterback. I don't know that I've ever seen that. I mean, you're down to a third-string quarterback to begin with. First drive, he goes down. Then Josh Johnson goes down, the fourth-string quarterback who was brought in mid-season with a concussion. You got Christian McCaffrey out there changing out helmets, possibly going to be the emergency quarterback. Just a terrible situation for a conference championship game. It was a miserable game to watch. There's no sugarcoating it. I thought Greg Olsen was terrific on the call. There's a story up at OutKick about how people positively reacted to the way he can explain different things like the RPO in a way that just everyday fans can understand. But that was a terrible, terrible game to watch. And you knew it was over the moment Brock Purdy went out.
Yeah, and honestly...
And that's no disrespect to the Eagles. They handled business. They did what they needed to do.
If Purdy stays in, I still think the way Philadelphia was playing, they're winning that game. But it, no question, had a major impact on the outcome and the overall watchability of the NFC Championship game in the second half. Philadelphia is headed back to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2017. They're not going to be wearing underdog masks when they arrive, get off the plane in Arizona early next week. Much different story where Jalen Hurts has lost just one game as the starter all season, and they've won 16 of their last 19 games. Despite the easy route to the Super Bowl, this is no easy task that they're going up against in KC, and with the quarterback play of Patrick Mahomes even on one leg, essentially. What a performance. When you got the ball back with, under 3 minutes to go, you're thinking, okay, they're going to drain the clock, go kick a field goal. They then punt back to Cincinnati on fourth down and 7 or 8. They're from the Cincinnati 37-yard line, game tied at 20. Burrow still picks up the first down on the third down throw. They end up having to punt back, however. The punt return sets up Mahomes for the run. You have Osai with the lack of poise and discipline on the sideline, and Mahomes leads another game-winning drive. He's back in the Super Bowl for the third time. So is Philadelphia, and here's Philly with the chance to go up against Mahomes, and for the first time, we're going to see Mahomes as the underdog, which is unusual.
Here is, from ESPN Stats and Info, that punt on 4th and 8 from the 37-yard line with 2:36 left in the game ranks in the 99.9th percentile of cowardly punts during the 2022 season. Taking that a step further, it also ranks in the 99.9th percentile of cowardly punts since 1999. We are in an era where teams go for it more and more. This is one of the most cowardice punts since 1999 by Andy Reid, and what happened? It paid off for them because they got the stop. Analytics always don't tell the story. and they got the necessary stop, got the ball back. Patrick Mahomes once again worked some magic on one leg, and then the unfortunate end of the game where Joseph Osai hits him late out of bounds. We'll be talking a lot about that. It was the right call. There were other calls in this game that absolutely were not the right call. That was not one of them. The correct call was made. Kansas City wins at home. All of these games, the 3-0 that Burrow was against the Chiefs, and now the Chiefs finally winning, all decided by 3 points exactly as Kansas City gets it done.
McPherson sent Cincy to the Super Bowl last year. Now it's Butker on the 45-yarder. And let's tie in both games with the officiating, which is a storyline. The NFL always wins regardless of the controversy, but there's no way they're winning us over with any type of explanation other than, yeah, it wasn't good for either game. And we will also get to the emergency quarterback topic a bit later. But as far as the officiating goes, they're now going into a Super Bowl where the lead official's crew during the season threw more flags than any crew in the NFL. And he was graded as the best official and his crew in the NFL for these all-star crews that we're seeing. Chad, yesterday it was inconsistent. We saw a lack of communication many times and plenty of confusion on both sidelines. From the first game where Brett Kern's punt, where everyone's reacting to it hitting a wire.
Entire Eagles sideline.
To the inability to go to the eye in the sky for the Devontae Smith incompletion that was setting up Philly's first touchdown that gave them 7-0 lead. To then the second game, KC and Cincinnati, where inconsistency is putting it mildly. And I felt like Cincy got the raw end of many of those calls. They redid third down twice on defensive issues, a clock issue, official issue, and then an Eli Apple defensive pass interference call that bailed out Kansas City not once but twice in a series of 2 snaps.
I thought that Chiefs game got off to a bad start when Andy Reid had a very weird challenge on a clear incompletion that was overturned. And I'm thinking, Andy Reid, of all people, you got to see that that's an incomplete pass. It was very obvious upon review, and instead he has a bad challenge. That was a bad start. The inability, I understand it's loud, the inability, though, to stop the play, and we saw this on both sides. One was the clock issue with the Chiefs where it wasn't loud on offense. The other was a noise issue with the Bengals facing a third down, and they try to stop it because of a false start. Instead, Joe Burrow ends up rushing for the first down. Now, imagine if Joe Burrow gets injured on that play that didn't exist. It didn't happen. And he's out for the game because they couldn't properly stop the play. Imagine if only half the players hear a whistle on the clock issue and Patrick Mahomes gets clocked and he's out for the rest of the game and the Bengals go on to win the Super Bowl. This is a player safety issue. When the refs can't properly stop the game in time, it was horrific. Watching it in the time, it was confusing. They did a terrible job explaining exactly what was going on. The Chiefs punt team was on the field at one point, had to come back off because they got a do-over on 3rd and 7. It was an odd game. Everyone wants to lean into that final hit out of bounds as a problem. That wasn't the problem. It was these do-overs. To me, that was the big issue in that game, officiating-wise.
The Osai shove just ended the game.
Yeah.
It didn't cost Cincinnati the game, per se, with the way that game played out. But it did end the game with a Harrison Butker 45-yard field goal immediately. Miami, the Dolphins, they have hired Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator. And, Chad, with Fangio, keep this in mind, he had plenty of options as the former Broncos head coach. Took a year off. He was the hottest name in terms of defensive coordinators available. He's choosing to go work with Mike McDaniel in Miami. That should speak volumes about their young head coach and what the veteran coach thinks of him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great match when you have someone. Anytime you can have a first-year, second-year head coach and pair them with someone with head coaching experience, especially someone as adept at running one side of the football like Vic Fangio is on defense, it's a no-brainer. Great pickup for the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. That's a very good roster. We're going to talk Tom Brady at parts today, but the big thing with the Dolphins right now is you can't put any true faith in them because you don't know the status of Tua Tagovailoa from week to week. That's a big issue for Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins. Until they solve that, I really don't know where they're going. But I like everything else about this staff and about that roster other than the quarterback position.
And Armando Salguero with the note at OutKick.com. The last 8 years as a defensive coordinator with the 49ers and the Bears, Vic Fangio's defense finished 4 times in the top 5, 6 times in the top 10. You can expect great defense in Miami because Fangio is going to be manning the helm of the coordinator position. The Cowboys, they're parting ways with Kellen Moore, who immediately finds a job. He's the new offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. And the play caller in Dallas is going to end up being Mike McCarthy and heading up the offense that ultimately got him the job in Green Bay. Moore is out, and you knew he was out whenever McCarthy did not give the vote of confidence at the end-of-season press conference.
That was a bad sign. This is also Mike McCarthy completely betting on himself in this year. I mean, this is a bold move for a guy who we thought before that Tampa game, if they were going to lose in the wild card round of the playoffs, he was probably going to be out of a job. Now he has a job. Not only that, he is giving himself more responsibility and putting more of the blame on his shoulders if this does not get fixed. It feels like Super Bowl or bust for Mike McCarthy, at least a conference championship game for him next year, and he's decided best chance at doing that is me calling plays. Bold move. We'll see how it plays out.
It felt like it could have been that way this year with how things got started in Dallas versus how they ended. And it also feels like he was told, you're making staff changes. Moore wasn't the only guy who's out on McCarthy's staff. This feels like make these changes, keep your job. You can prove it by being the OC as well in terms of calling plays on game day. Chances are this doesn't end well. It's Dallas, it's Prescott, it's McCarthy.
It's Prescott. We hit on it last week. It's Dak Prescott's time to lead this team past where they've been. And I don't have faith he's going to do that. So for that reason, others will lose their job, not just Kellen Moore a year from now.
Chad, you and I were in Dallas this weekend. We missed Stetson Bennett's party by about 24 hours. Arrested this weekend for public intoxication. And we'll see him here walking out of the detention center where he stayed until he was released and, he drove off to somewhere. I'll say this. It's very difficult to get arrested for public intoxication. If you've never been to Nashville, walk down Broadway. It's difficult. You have to be a douche to pull this off. And to me, this is exactly what happened. I don't need to see the details of this. You don't have to just run into the wrong police officer at the wrong time. Stetson Bennett had to work at getting this storyline over the weekend. So, maybe there's more to it than that, but I've seen and heard a lot worse in real time, Chad. So have you. We're headed to the Super Bowl next week. There will be plenty of instances where people will be in public and intoxicated. And the fact that Stetson Bennett is headed to the detention center this week in Dallas should tell you that things did not go as it should have, where you simply, maybe he's going walking to an Uber. Who knows? But he's not like he was driving, he was pulled over. This is just being in public and being intoxicated and being out of your mind.
So my understanding with the story was he was in a neighborhood and he was knocking on doors at 6 a.m. trying to find where he was staying. And people called the cops on him. When the cops showed up, he was so wasted that he got a public intoxication. Hey, knock on wood, we've never been arrested at a Super Bowl.
Or period.
I'm continuing to knock. We were in Dallas on Friday night, certainly not arrested.
Were we knocking on doors?
We're not in the news. We were not knocking on doors. Look, it's a public intoxication, arrest. It's not the end of the world. But I think when you start to look at Stetson Bennett doing an interview on ABC wasted after the first national championship, when you start to look into these other things, he essentially does not go to the Senior Bowl. We'll talk to the executive director later. It looks like he didn't go because he wanted to go to Dallas and party. Even if that's not the case, when you get arrested for public intoxication and you're ducking out of the Senior Bowl, that's not a good look. None of this is going to help Stetson Bennett. It's been one L after the other since all the wins in college
but he was,
as quarterback at Georgia.
But also, to be fair to the story, he was praised for going on Good Morning America drunk.
Yeah.
He was living his best life.
And now it's a very different story when you see him getting arrested.
He was
for
publicly intoxicated then, And I would still maintain, if you're Stetson Bennett and you're knocking on doors trying to go to bed, it's tough to end up at the detention center.
Remember the
You have to work at that.
Remember the rich guy who in Fayetteville, Arkansas, just walked into the wrong house?
Yeah, but then
And
the
got in
cops
bed?
walked. Yeah, and then the cops walked in, tried to get him up, and he just tried to go back to sleep.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm really tired, guys. Can we handle this?
Can you give me
business
5
later?
hours? I'll wake up and go with you guys.
Tough look for old Stetson. I'm not going to bet against the guy. I think he's going to come back stronger from this public intox rap. Probably going to get it pled down to something less, and he'll be just fine. He'll go on to win multiple Super Bowls as a quarterback in the NFL. I'm done betting against him no matter what he does.
Unless he's the emergency third string where he doesn't have a chance to play on game day.
The 49ers could have used him. Even in the state he was on Sunday. After being arrested for public intoxication, they could have used him at quarterback.